Assalamu alaikum. So today I was asked about this verse in Surah An-Nahl, chapter 16, which is verse 92, which when you read the beginning of it, it could sound like a little confusing. But I think if we study it deeper, there's actually some really deep philosophy behind it. And we can think of it as what some philosophers refer to as the social contract. But let's explore it a little bit, especially when you look at the rest of the verse before it, and the verses that come after it. So the beginning of the verse says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّتِي نَقَضَتْ غَزْلَهَا مِنْ بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ أَنْكَاثًا. So it says, do not be like the one who undid her weaving after it was strong. أَنْكَاثًا. I'll talk about that in a second, that word in a second. But what does it mean? Why is it referring to the one who undid her weaving after it was strong? What does this mean? So Allah knows best, but what I believe this is referring to is it's using figurative language in order to convey a certain picture to us. If we look at the rest of the verse before it, and what comes after it, I think it'll make a lot more sense. So if we go to the verse before it, which is verse 91, we see it's talking about the covenant of Allah. It says, وَأَوْفُوا بِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ إِذَا عَاهَدْتُمْ, and fulfill completely the covenant of Allah when you make a covenant. وَلَا تَنْقُضُوا الْأَيْمَانَ بَعْدَ تَوْكِيدِهَا, and do not violate or undo the oaths after they have been made solid. So this word وَلَا تَنْقُضُوا is the same word that's used in the next verse about the one undoing her weaving. نَقَضَ كَالَّتِي نَقَضَتْ غَزْلَهَا. نَقَضَ. So just like when you weave something together tightly and then you start to unravel it, that's what it's talking about. So in the verse before it, it's saying don't وَلَا تَنْقُضُوا الْأَيْمَانِ, don't unravel your oaths. So when you make oaths and it's firmly and compactly tightened together and established, don't unravel them. بَعْدَ تَوْكِيدِهَا, after they've been made strong. وَقَدْ جَعَلْتُمُ اللَّهَ عَلَيْكُمْ كَفِيلًا, and you have made Allah as a kafil over you. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ, Allah knows what you are doing. So in 1691, he's talking about oaths, right? And oaths are a social thing. Like we interact with each other by making these agreements. So even though it's talking about oaths, perhaps another way we can think about that in more modern terminology is we have these contracts or agreements that we make between each other socially. So then when he says وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّتِي نَقَضَتْ غَزْلَهَا مِنْ بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ, don't be like the one who unraveled her weaving after strength, after it was made strong. So perhaps what it's referring to is it's just using figurative language to think about someone who's weaving something together, like a rope or something of that nature. And the reason a rope comes to my mind is because in another place in the Qur'an, it refers to hablun min Allah, illa bi hablin min Allah wa hablin min an-nas, except by a rope min Allah, a rope from Allah, and a rope from the people. So perhaps the idea of a rope is referring to like some kind of a connection or a covenant. So here, don't be like the one who undid her weaving. So you weave this rope together very tightly and strongly, and then you undo it. It doesn't make sense. Don't be like that. Don't be like the one who's unweaving the work that you did. So it's relating the social contract and the social agreements to this firm thing that we put together, and then when you don't uphold them, or as we'll see when we read the rest of the verse, if you have some kind of an agenda in making these agreements, but you don't really intend on fulfilling them, then you begin to unweave this firm thing that you established. So let's read the rest of the verse. He says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّتِي نَقَضَتْ غَزْلَهَا مِنْ بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ أَنْكَاثًا, don't be like the one who unraveled her weaving after it was strong. أَنْكَاثًا, أَنْكَاثًا, loosely by means of breaking the oath or violating the oath. تَتَّخِذُونَ أَيْمَانَكُمْ دَخَلًا بَيْنَكُمْ, you are taking, so this is an explanation of that phrase, the one that's unraveling her weaving, تَتَّخِذُونَ أَيْمَانَكُمْ دَخَلًا بَيْنَكُمْ, that you're taking your oaths as a means of entrance between yourselves. So, and Allah knows best how I take this. is when you have an agenda and you're trying to get close to someone, to deceive them in some kind of way, to take advantage of them in some kind of way, they have to let you in to their confidence in order for you to do that. If you don't have their confidence, if they don't let you in their confidence, you can't take advantage of them, right? So they have to trust you, they have to let you in. So تَتَّخِذُونَ أَيْمَانَكُمْ دَخَلًا بَيْنَكُمْ. You take your oaths as a means of entrance between you. So you use your agreements and your contracts as a means to enter into people's confidences. أَن تَكُونَ أُمَّةٌ هِيَ أَرْبَى مِنْ أُمَّةٍ. Why would you do that? So that a group of people would be more profitable, or arba, they would grow more, they would have more than another group of people. Okay, so think about that. Don't be like the one who unraveled her weaving after it was strong by way of violating oaths. تَتَّخِذُونَ أَيْمَانَكُمْ, meaning you're taking your oaths as a means of entrance between you. أَن تَكُونَ أُمَّةٌ هِيَ أَرْبَى مِنْ أُمَّةٍ. So that a group of people would grow more or have more profit than another group of people. And so that's why I said perhaps the deep philosophy here is referring to the social contract, because it's talking about groups of people. So the word ummah isn't just a nation as it's often translated. The word ummah could be a social group, right? And we have many ummam in a given society. We have many different social groups in a given society. And the only way a society can function is the social contract, meaning amongst ourselves, when we have all these different groups and we have all these different perspectives, and how do we function as a society? We have to have a contract between us where we agree on certain principles, right? Where we agree, I'll stop at a red light, you'll go at the green light, I'll stop at the stop sign. We won't, kill each other, we won't steal from each other. There are certain principles that we agree on. So these perhaps can be looked at in these verses as our ayman. These are our oaths or our agreements or our contracts that we make just from living in a social setting where you have all these different kind of groups and perspectives. And that's the only way we can function as a society. So when we take that contract, when we take those agreements, when we take that trust, and now we try to take advantage of other groups, and takuna ummatun hiya arba min ummah, so that one group could be more profitable or can grow more or have more than another group. Innama yablukumullahu bihi. Allah is testing you with this. This is a test from Allah, that you don't violate your social contract with other human beings. وَلَا يُبَيِّنَنَّ لَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ مَا كُنْتُمْ فِيهِ تَخْتَلِفُونَ. And He will certainly explain to you on the Day of Judgment that which you used to differ about. And then in the next verse, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. See, that's why I said these verses perhaps are related to the idea of the social contract, because look how he focuses on the idea of ummah. He's not necessarily focusing on just individuals, he's focusing on groups of people. So in this verse he says, if Allah had willed, He would have made you one ummah. So if He would have willed, He would have made you one social group, not competing social groups. So because He did not will that, because there are different groups in society, it's very important that you maintain these social contracts and not become like the one who undoes her weaving after it's been made strong. وَلَكِنْ يُضِلُّ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. However, He misleads whom He wills and He guides whom He wills. وَلَا تُسْأَلُنَّ عَمَّا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. And you will certainly be asked about what you used to do. And then the next verse, وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا أَيْمَانَكُمْ دَخَلًا بَيْنَكُمْ. He repeats this phrase that we already read. So that's another thing that makes me believe that this is the main point of the, if you want to call it a parable, or the figurative use of language of undoing the thread after making it strong. So the fact that he repeats this, I feel, and Allah knows best, that this is telling us this is the main point. وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا أَيْمَانَكُمْ دَخَلًا بَيْنَكُمْ. Do not take your oaths as a way of entering amongst you, as a means to kind of get in and fulfill your agenda. Don't take this social contract like that. فَتَزِلَّ قَدَمٌ بَعْدَ ثُبُوتِهَا. So that a foot would slip after it's being firm. So even though he said a foot, what does that mean? So that a foot would slip after it's being firm. So perhaps another way to look at that is qadam means foot, but it also could have the meaning of putting something forward. Like if you say وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا from the same root, مِنْ خَيْرٍ, whatever you present or put forward of goodness, right? So do not take your oaths as a means of entrance amongst yourselves, so that a qadam would slip after it's been made firm. So perhaps a qadam could also be thought about as progress. So if we do this socially, if we take our oaths and our social contracts as a means of entrance amongst each other, as a means to fulfill our own personal agendas, فَتَزِلَّ قَدَمٌ بَعْدَ ثُبُوتِهَا, then every time we make progress and that progress has been established, then we will lose it. We'll never be able to make progress in society because we'll all just be trying to take advantage of each other. وَتَذُوقُ السُّوءَ بِمَا صَدَدْتُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and you will taste evil because you block from the path of Allah. وَلَكُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ, and for you will be a painful punishment. وَلَا تَشْتَرُوا بِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا, and do not purchase by the covenant of Allah a small gain. إِنَّمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ هُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, truly what is with Allah is better for you if you only knew. So I think when you put that phrase, if you take it by itself, don't be like the one who undid her weaving after it was strong. It seems like it doesn't make sense, or it's kind of confusing, but if you put it in the context, it gives us a very beautiful word picture of the idea of not violating the social contract. And Allah knows best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.